guys have had a great day today. It's been a lot of fun watching you guys in Color Wars and having an awesome day together. Before we get started tonight, I want to make sure that everybody got an index card and something to write with when they came in. Or if you didn't get a little white card, raise your hand. And some of our Siloam friends will grab one for you. So keep your hand up if you need that white card. We're going to need that in just a minute. Alright, so we'll start with cards. Real quick, raise your hand if you need one of those white cards. Alright. There are lots of helpful people coming to you that are faster than me. I won't flail my legs and run after you. Alright, hands up if you need a white card. They're coming around. And then it would be so tragic. You would not want it. Alright, there's also pencils coming around, so if you need a pencil, also wave your hand there. Alright, so cards, pencils coming around. You can tell your friends that come by a card or a pencil and they'll help you out. Alright, thank you for being patient for our friends needing supplies. Alright. While you have your writing utensil and your card ready, we're going to do something that's going to come back later. Alright? So if you've got your card and your pencil, we're going to do something that we're going to use later. So everybody look this way. On your card, really big, you're just going to put 3 letters. You're going to spell one word there, and just put in all capital letters the word yes. Alright? On your note, you need a note card? Alright, we need one more card if we have one. You need a card on the front row. Thank you, sir. All right, on your card with whatever you have to write with, it doesn't matter if it's a tiny pencil or a big pen or anything like that, just the word yes, really big, on that card. All right? Yeah, you can put exclamation mark, point, I don't know, one of those, you can do it. My wife calls those bats and balls. Because when I write emails, I put too many exclamation points and she says, too many bats and balls. So she doesn't like it being too much like baseball. Put that. All right. So has everybody got that written down on their card? Got the word yes real big on there? All right. You hold on to that, and you can put your pencil down or put it under your pew there. But make sure you can get to that card here in a few minutes. All right. Now this morning we were talking about doing what others will not. Right? Doing what others won't. That's what we were talking about this morning. And we talked about all the things that God might call us to do. That might be scary or might be dangerous. And so I wanted to share with you something that God called me to do that I was really scared to do. Now, I was a children's minister in a church, and when I got hired, this way, if you need to put your pencil and card under your seat, that's awesome too, but just make sure you can get to it. Alright, so a few years ago, I was a children's minister in the church, and I started a new job, and the pastor said, you're going to go to Moldova. And I said, a what? Moana? No. Moldova, what? And he said, yeah, it's this small country, and we do kids camp there, and we need you to go. We do camp for orphans. And I was like, okay, I don't even know where that is. And he said, yeah, the capital of Moldova is Chisinau, and so we're going to go there, we're going to do kids camp. Well, I didn't know anything about it, so I was going around telling everybody, we're going to do kids camp in Chechnya, which adults might know is a really dangerous part of Russia, not Moldova at all, even though they're not far apart. But even as we were in the airport, I was like, this isn't our flight. It says Chisinau. And they were like, yeah, that's where we're going. And I was like, no, we're going to Chechnya. They said, no, you're not. I didn't know anything about where I was going, and I was really nervous. And I probably wouldn't have signed up if the pastor didn't say, you're going. You're our children's minister, and you're going to do camp, and you're going to love it. And so I was like, okay, because Pastor John doesn't like staying up really late, being dirty, being in foreign places. And so I was like, I don't know about this. So I signed up to go, and we went to Moldova for the first time, and we worked with orphans. And I'm going to read a verse to you. This was a verse that I knew, but that really helped me get focused on my mission that God had called me on. And it's in the book of James, chapter 1, verse 27. So if you have your Bible, you can turn there. James chapter 1, verse 27. This is a verse we used a lot in our preparation for these mission trips to go work with orphans in Moldova. All right, James chapter 1, verse 27. I'll give you a second to find it if you're looking there. James chapter 1, 27. All right, it's almost at the end of the book. You can see it in the little flaps. All right, at the end. James chapter 1, verse 27. If you found it, put your thumb up. We got a few that found it. If you're still looking, that's cool. Just listen real closely. It's a short verse. James chapter 1, verse 27 says this. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this. All right, listen closely. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this. To visit orphans and widows in their affliction or their distress, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. Look this way. All right? Everybody looking this way? Awesome. All right, James 1:27 says, pure religion is to visit orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself from being stained from the world. So I knew that working with orphans was something that God would call us to do and would use us doing, but I was still really, really scared about going into these orphanages and working with kids. I didn't know Romanian, which was the language, so I had to learn all this Romanian to go. We taught Bible study. We basically did what you're doing here all the way over there. So they had different activities they could do and Bible study and worship. And I got to know these kids and I fell in love with these orphans in Moldova. And I have been to Moldova 24 times working with orphans and I love it. But I wanted to introduce you to one of them right now on the screen. And his name's Dennis. So if we'll put this picture up. All right, this is one of the kids that I got to know in the orphanage in the capital city of Chisinau, not Chechnya, in Moldova. And this little guy's name is Dennis. And I met him teaching Bible study in his bunk. Like you guys have bunk houses here. We would do Bible study in their bunks. And we would sit around on the beds and we would read God's Word together. And we had translators that would translate from English into Romanian for them. And Dennis I got to know really well on that first trip to Moldova. And one night as I was sharing the gospel with him, just like we've done this week, hearing God's Word and the gospel, Dennis prayed to receive Christ on his bed. The beds were so bad they were broken and their little bottoms would sink to the bottom of the floor through their beds. But he heard the gospel and he said he wanted to become a Christian. So we prayed right there on his bed in his little bunk room at this camp, and Dennis became a Christian. Now, since that point, Dennis and I got to know each other. Every time I'd come back to Moldova, we would visit him and talk to him. And I got married a few years later, and my wife Emily got to go with me to Moldova, and we got to hang out with Dennis. And along that journey, there was a very difficult job that God gave us to do, an assignment that not everyone will do, like we talked about this morning, all right? And God called us to adopt Dennis. And so we went through a process. Moldova is really scary, especially when kids get too old to live in the orphanage. All right, when they turn 15, most of them have to join a gang. Some of them commit suicide. It's really, really sad. So when we got to know Dennis and we knew his potential and we built this relationship, we offered him the chance to come to America and be part of our family. And so we prayed about it. We felt like that was what God was calling us to do, and we adopted Dennis. And he became part of our family in 2010. And this is a picture of us all together. The next one there. That's us together. Dennis came to live with us in Nashville, Tennessee. And he came to live with us. We did a lot of fun activities. We got him enrolled in school. And now he has gotten an engineering degree from UT Knoxville in Tennessee and has an engineering job and is doing awesome. But the process that it took to get there, that's awesome. Yeah. Now we felt like God was calling us to do that, and we know that he did that. But the story wasn't easy, all right? Dennis came to live with us, and every day of our life was perfect until he turned 18. And the day he turned 18, he stole a car and ran away and joined the army and cut all contact with us until about a year ago when he reached out to us and told us he was okay and doing well. And it was difficult for us, all right? We were sad. And so how many of you have heard the story of the prodigal son in the Bible, where the two brothers divide up the money that they were going to get, and one runs away and blows it all right, and has to come back? So that's what we are living right now. We wait every day for Dennis to come home to us. And my wife said she'll throw the biggest party, just like they had the fat calf in the story. But it's been a difficult process. But we know that even though it's a tough thing to do to adopt a kid from a foreign country. We know we did what God called us to. He has a future and a hope, and he knows the Lord, and he's gotten an education. But something we didn't know about the culture in Moldova is that when you're a grown-up, you can't take anything from anyone. So we didn't know that going into that, but at 18 he said, I'm a man, I'm going to go take care of myself, and I'll talk to you later. And so it's been a struggle in that situation, but we know that God has a plan, and we did what God called us to. Sometimes when you follow him and you step out and you say, yes, I will do what you call me to do, sometimes it's not exactly what you think it will be. Just like in the story of the prodigal son, when the son ran away, that wasn't what the father intended. But the son came back eventually, and we pray every day that Dennis will do that and come back to us and be part of our family. Now, something else that my work in Moldova did was really give me a heart and a passion for orphans. All right? Little did I know that I would lose my mom when I was 12 and my dad right after college, and I had become an orphan myself. And God was using all of that in my life to make me be able to minister to orphans in an effective way. So the things that you go through in your life, you might think they're horrible and there's no reason, but God can work through all of those situations in a way that you might not be able to see right now. So when my mom passed away, the most important person in the world ripped away from me, then 20 years later when I was at a camp just like this, I got to sit with another child, a boy that had lost his mom, and we just shared stories about our moms. He didn't want to talk about anything else. He just wanted to know someone was hearing him, and we shared stories about our mom. I didn't know God would use that in my life, that really sad moment, to minister to somebody else, but he did that. And after losing both of my parents, to be able to be in Moldova and minister to orphans was something that God will take out of a really sad situation and make it good. Now, I was doing all this work in Moldova, working with orphans, and I wanted to tell you about a special mission that God gave me that was really difficult as well. We went to a little place in Orhe, Moldova, which is north of the capital. In this little town, anyone who had a special need, like a disability, they would take out of the capital and they would go put them in this town by themselves because they didn't want anyone to know they existed, which is really sad. And so we were able to go and to work with them. And the thing that we did for them was to take their old broken beds. I told you about the old beds that were soiled and gross. We took all those beds out of their orphanage and gave them beautiful, new, pretty beds for them to sleep on, especially for these kids who had special needs. It was better for their backs and better for their health. And so we went to this town and built these beds for these kids, and I was terrified. I don't have any experience at this point working with anyone with special needs, and I was worried I was going to break them the whole time. I didn't want to hug them. I was afraid that I was going to hurt them. And God put me in this situation to grow me and said, you're going to minister to these children. And it was extremely difficult. And I wanted to show you some pictures tonight of the kids and the orphanage we worked in. And then I'll tell you one more thing about this trip. So let's watch this video together of my trip to work with these orphans and working with them.
Jesus, you are. Jesus, you were. Jesus, you will always be. A perfect servant to us, a perfect servant to death, even death on a cross. Give us a picture of your face, show us the measure of your grace, reveal the love of the Father. Put within us tenderness, release from us all selfishness, that we'll consider them better. We are yours. Give us hearts of service. Jesus, you are. Jesus, you were. Jesus, you will always be. A perfect servant to us, a perfect servant to death, even death on a cross. Oh, give us a picture of your face, show us the measure of your grace, reveal the love of the Father. Lord, put within us tenderness, release from us all selfishness, we'll consider them better. All selfishness, that we'll consider them better. We are yours, and give us hearts of servants. We are yours, give us hearts of servants. Lord, we are yours. Give us hearts of servants.
All right, give you a little glimpse into that trip and those kids. I bet you could see some things as you were looking at that video, how happy those kids were to get their beds and how they just needed love, which is crazy to think about. Sometimes you might not have to go days and weeks without somebody putting their arm around you or hugging you. These kids, no one would touch them. They put them out in the woods, out in this orphanage. It was really sad. And I had done a really good job of avoiding it the whole week. So we had gone, 3 or 4 days, and I had not been hands-on with the kids. I had not hugged anybody. I was scared that I would hurt them. And so I just kind of hung back. And finally, we were getting ready to finish our trip, and the orphanage director said, come here, and grabbed me and my friend Sam. And I was like, where are we going? I don't know where we're going. And he said, these kids down here are sick, and they just need some food. And so we brought some yogurt, and we fed them and just spent time with them. And it was a sweet, sweet time. And I thought, I've been missing out on loving these sweet kids. And so the next day, I just hugged as many as I could. I'm sorry, that makes me sad. But loved working with these kids and being able to feed them. And the next day, I just really invested in them because they just needed someone to spend time with them and to love them. So I want to talk to you tonight about the gospel, like we talked about the other night. We've talked about what it's like to take on an assignment from God that might be difficult. All right, so let's walk through that gospel slide tonight together. It's our last night together in here for worship. So let's look at that gospel slide we've looked at. And I really want you to think, all right, if you are already a believer, let this confirm in you your faith, all right? If you believe these things, if you know them to be true. And if you're not a Christian tonight, I really want you to ask yourself, if you believe these things, and to think about, is it time today for me to ask Jesus into my life to be my Lord and Savior? All right? I'm going to see if it'll come up on the screen. All right. It might not. If it does pop up there, it'll be good. But let's walk through the gospel we've looked at every night. There we go. Amazing. It's a miracle. All right. So let's look at that together. And I want you to think about, do you believe these things? Just like we walked through the other night, right? First thing, do you believe that God rules? All right, do you believe that He created you and created me, created the whole universe? All right, do you believe that everything in this whole world is because He has wanted it to be here and wants us to be here as well? So if you believe that God rules, all right, that's the first step in knowing, is it time for me to become a Christian? All right, the second thing we need to think about tonight is, do you understand that you've sinned? Remember the first night we talked about that, and I asked you to think about sins kids your age deal with? And then I ask you to think about sins that you have committed, things you have done that God doesn't like. Do you remember that? And if you can't think of anything at all that you've done that God doesn't like, then you're not ready to become a Christian and give your life to Jesus. All right? But if you can think about things you've done that you know God doesn't like, disrespecting your parents or not obeying them or being mean to someone, all these things, if you can think of those things, that's really the key to knowing if you're ready to become a Christian. If you could admit that you've messed up and then you don't want to do those things anymore because God doesn't like them. All right? If you can understand your sin and know that you don't want to do that stuff anymore, then you may be ready to become a Christian tonight. All right? Next, you have to understand that the punishment for that sin, that stuff we do, even if it seems small, a lie or disrespecting your parents or cheating on a test at school, the punishment for that sin is what? Death. Separation from God forever. But thankfully, God didn't want that to happen. He wanted you to have a relationship with Him, so He sent Jesus to die on the cross to pay the price for that. All right? So we didn't have to die and be separated. Jesus died and paid that price for us. He paid that penalty for our sin so that we can have a relationship with God forever. All right? So if you believe that God provided that way for us through Jesus, and Jesus is God's Son, that He lived a perfect life on earth, He was raised from the dead, and then He's going to come back, then you may be ready to become a Christian tonight. And when you hear that for the first time and it clicks, and you know that you need to become a Christian, then we respond to that call. We respond to that we know the gospel and we need Jesus to come into our lives. So I want everybody to take out that piece of paper, that card, where you wrote the word yes on it, and just hold it out in front of you. Just hold that word yes out in front of you. Make sure everybody can see it right there in front of you. Here's what I want you to think about tonight. All right? If you're a Christian, you're already a believer, adults, kids, anybody in here, and you are a believer, I want you to ask yourself if you can say yes to anything that God would call you to do. All right? I want you to think about, can you say yes to anything He asks you to do? All right? Things that other people might not be willing to do, going places other people might not be willing to go, sharing the gospel with friends in your school or your community or your church. I want you to look at that and think, am I willing to go and do whatever God asks me to do? And I really hope that your answer is yes tonight to that question. I want all of us in this room that are believers to know that we can have faith that God will equip us to everything He's called us to do. So if you're a Christian in this room, look down at that card and think, am I willing to do whatever and go wherever God asks me to do? All right? If you have never given your life to Jesus and you're thinking about that still, you've had questions this week, I want you to look down at that card and think this right here. All right? If you understood all that we talked about with the gospel right there, you know you've sinned, you don't want to do that anymore, and you need to ask Jesus to come into your life. If you know that you need to do that tonight, I want you to look at that card and think, I need to say yes tonight to Jesus, all right? Now that might be when we have a response time in a minute with the band. You might need to come forward and talk to one of our Siloam friends or talk to one of your adults. Or it might be back in your church time or it might be in your cabin tonight. But I want you to look at that and think, am I ready to become a Christian based on what we just talked about? And do I know that I need to do that tonight? And if that's you, I want you to look at that card and say, yes, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make that decision to follow Jesus. All right? And if you're in this room, you're not a Christian, you've come to camp and you've been learning a lot about Him, but it's not time for you to do that yet. You can't say that you believe all of this quite yet and you still have questions. I want you to look at that card that says yes and commit to taking another step forward towards that relationship with Jesus. All right? I want you to commit to continuing to learn about Him, to asking questions about Him and asking questions about what it would look like for you to become a Christian. But if that's not you, you're not ready tonight to become a Christian, I want you to look at that card that says yes and say, yes, I'll take a step towards Jesus. I want to learn more about Him, and when it's time, I will ask Jesus into my life. But it's not time tonight.